You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, welcome to the Creep Street Podcast. I'm Maureen Bogey.
And I'm Dylan Hackworth.
And we have a very, very exciting, special, sexy episode for you today.
This one's for the lovers.
It really is. It really is. This one's for the boys. But also, really quick before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. We would love it if you could give us a rating, a review, subscribe to our podcast. If you like what we're doing. And we also have a Twitter page. We have Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is at Creep Street Pod. And Instagram is at Creep Street Podcast. We'll be posting content that are kind of little fun things that we don't put on the podcast. Also some pictures, research, things like that. So feel free to check that out.
All right. You ready to get started?
Let's dive right in, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of David Huggins, a.k.a. the Alien Humper. Oh, man, does this guy hump aliens.
This will get you going.
This will get you going. This guy is the Casanova of Andromeda. This guy is the James Dean of the Milky Way.
Oh, my God.
He is a stud. So let's just give you
Your references were the most old man references.
Well, he's an old man.
I guess, so you know what, it checks out. He
is an old man. Now, a lot of when this stuff happened to him, he was younger. Now he's in his mid-70s.
Yeah.
He is a quiet man living in Hoboken, New Jersey, working part-time at a deli.
Yeah.
And in his spare time, he loves to paint. He's actually a pretty good painter.
Yeah, clearly has training.
And he paints depictions of his experiences with these aliens. But before we get too far into that, let's take it back to the beginning. David Huggins grew up in Georgia, in a rural Georgia town. He was raised on a farm, did a lot of farm work. His parents, or his grandparents, took him to religious tent revivals at a young age, and that kind of very early on kind of put him off of religion, kind of put a sour taste in his mouth.
Well, so I am from the suburbs of Chicago, now live in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so I have never really experienced anything like this. And I'm assuming a lot of other people are more city dwellers that are our listeners. So could you tell us what that is?
Tent revivals. I've been to a number of them when I was younger. They're outdoors. They're like it's one of those tents. Typically they don't have sides. They're just like kind of the canopy, the tent underneath. And it's essentially a very loud, raucous church service underneath a tent, very bare bones, maybe a podium and some chairs, but other than that, it's a very bare bones affair.
Right. I'm realizing that's in, what is it, True Detective season 1?
Yep, True Detective. That's
okay.
You see them sprinkled all around pop culture. They're a thing that's it was very big and it still goes on. But yeah, so
like
this
a pop-up church kind of vibe.
Right. And typically the people doing it already have a church. It's kind of a thing they like, especially in the summertime when the weather's nice.
Right.
I remember growing up, my church even sometimes did it in the church, like in the yard of the church. They would just in the summer times when it was real nice and everything.
That sounds nice.
So, a little something about David Huggins. So he grew up in Georgia, and something he loved to do as a kid while he wasn't doing farm work, which he said he loved to do. He loved doing hard labor on the farm, and that's awesome. He loved collecting arrowheads, and he said there was a lot of arrowheads around the farm in which he grew up. So this leads us to our very first encounter.
Oh, yeah.
David was at the tender age of 8 when he had his first extraterrestrial encounter. He said when he was 8 years old, he was walking to the barn and he heard a voice calling his name. And he turned around and he saw a little hairy guy running towards him. And he said this little hairy guy had bright eyes, like bright glowing eyes. And he's he's saying, "Hey, David." And he's just running after him, this little hairy guy. So, of course, David screams and he runs off to the barn to hide. And as he's running, he turns back and he sees this little hairy guy turn around and run back into the woods. And that was his first experience.
I mean, can you imagine?
It sounds like a kidnapper to me. But he said this was a little guy, like
well,
little.
it sounds like a Muppet. The way he's describing it.
Yeah, it's like a mini Bigfoot or no, you're absolutely right. It sounds like a Muppet.
And it's funny because the way that he describes him, it does sound like a Muppet and sounds like kind of like cute and whatever. Like he's saying this little hairy guy, like doesn't seem
right. It sounds like was it Groucho? Who are the two little ones that like narrate like Christmas, the Muppets Christmas Carol?
Oh,
Gonzo and something.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Know.
Yeah, like this little hairy dude.
But like when you just at surface level, when you first hear it, it doesn't really sound scary or whatever. But then if you think about it, like what if that actually did happen? It would be so scary, especially as an 8-year-old. But
I love the alien had the self-awareness to be like, oh shit, and turn and run back into the woods. I'm sorry. Like that's something you don't hear about in a lot of alien stories is aliens with self-awareness.
I gotta say, this story we'll get more into some details later on about what makes me think this, but I don't know. I always have a real open mind, and this one, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
This one's a lot.
It's a lot. But this is just one of very, very many experiences. So the next experience was, and by the way, I just want to say all of this, it's in a very fascinating documentary called Love and Saucers. You can find it on Amazon Prime and stream it. Very, very fun little documentary, but that is where the majority of this information is coming from if you want to check that out for yourself, because there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that we just aren't able to encapsulate and put into this podcast. But so they're getting that out of the way. So his next experience, he was in the barn doing some work when he overheard, this time, a noise coming from around the back of the barn. So he goes around to the back of the barn and he finds a giant insect-like being that looks like a praying mantis.
Shut it down.
He starts screaming, as you would. But as he's screaming, this mantis alien shoots a bluish-gray liquid all over him. He turns away, running, screaming. But he notices as he's running, it's drying very quickly.
Oh, God.
What the hell is that?
Okay, so this fucking bug just jizzed on him.
It sounds like
basically.
It sounds like it. And like, what the hell was that? A bluish gray liquid, and then it just dries real quick?
And what a weird thing to note about it. That, like, him as a child, he remembers, like, that it was evaporating very quickly. Is what I think he says in the documentary.
I don't know if I would remember all that. I feel like between the sight of it and I would be... Oh, my God. I don't even know. Yeah.
But this thing, it's like, it basically just like fucking jizzed all over this person.
It did. It was marking its territory.
Weird.
And believe me, friends, this mantis, this is not the last you've heard of the mantis.
Oh, God.
But that's not where it ends. Later, another experience, he's going for a walk.
Oh, no.
Around the farm, the farmlands, and he hears a cow mooing. And he looks over, it grabs his attention, he looks into one of the fields, and he sees a little head pop up behind some bushes. And it keeps like popping its head up and ducking back down like it's a whack-a-mole. And then he said he just saw a light so bright that he passed out. And he woke up several minutes later, and he was surrounded by several aliens. And then all of a sudden, try to follow this, because this is it just jumps around. He wakes up surrounded by all these aliens, and then he hears 3 beeps, and suddenly he's standing chest deep in a field, like in weeds and whatnot, grass and whatnot.
Yeah.
So 1 second he's cuddled up on the ground, like scared, surrounded by these aliens staring. Then he hears 3 beeps, beep, 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 and he's standing all alone in this field.
What the hell?
Another experience happens. He's out in the back field looking for arrowheads, as he does. God, he loves his arrowheads.
Yeah, gee, what is that?
It's like his crack rock.
Oh, you know what it is? Yeah,
that's what it is. It's his meth.
Oh,
it's
okay, now I get it.
He just loves arrowheads, which is cool. I've known people who like to collect them, and they are cool
No,
when
I
you
mean,
find
they
them.
are
I'm not
cool to collect.
I don't mean to bust his balls. I mean that's actually that's cool, man. When you can find those, I mean that's cool.
God bless.
Absolutely. So he's out in the back field of the farms looking for arrowheads, when all of a sudden he sees like 8 to 9 of these little blue men just fall out of the sky. And they chase him back to his house.
Oh, my God.
And the way they're depicted in his paintings, when he says little blue men, In his paintings, they appear to be little gray aliens. Grays are a very famous, typically you hear about the grays. It's a very famous term for extraterrestrials. And it looks like as if they're wearing blue jumpsuits. So I think when he says blue, I think he means they were grays wearing blue jumpsuits. At least that's how they're depicted in his paintings, but he refers to them in the documentary as these little blue men. So they chase him up into the house, right? So later that night, they're outside of his window. And then, without explanation, they're in his room.
Yeah. So
they take him outside, and they take him up into a craft. So he's inside of this strange alien craft. And he says it's very well lit. And suddenly this woman enters, and she's walking up toward him. And this other gray alien behind him sort of holds his head back, so his nose is in the air. This alien woman is holding a rod. She takes this rod and she jams it up his nose. Oh, God. And injects some sort of a device, he believes. Almost like you're tagging cattle or something. He just shoves it in his nose. And she pulls the rod out and he says, ow, of course, that would hurt like hell. He says, you hurt me. And he says, she said, let me see. And he said, suddenly she just made the pain go away.
And in the documentary, when he says that part, he's like kind of getting emotional.
He is. He's getting emotional. And just for reference, how he describes these crafts, they're oval shaped, and oftentimes they're very bright. They're glowing. Sometimes he said, though, they're very dark. But he said most of the time they're very bright and glowing, but whenever they're around, all sound is gone.
Right.
So even if car drives by, you wouldn't hear it. It's like it and he says, but it's a very peaceful silence. It's a very soothing silence. It's not scary. So before we get deeper into this, before we get into all the lovemaking, I just want to do a little recap of the types of aliens.
Let's do it.
That David came across. So very first you had the small gray aliens, little guys in jumpsuits. He thinks they were maybe like workers, like little worker bees that, are doing basically the manual labor and stuff like that.
Right.
Then the hairy man with the bright eyes. That was his first experience, was the hairy guy.
Right.
Then here's one he doesn't talk about as much. A tall man with a knob on the back of his head. He said he seemed to be in charge. It looks like a cock. It looks like a cock coming out of the back of the guy's head. Imagine like a tea kettle, like an old fashioned, like a tea kettle from like Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. So the front of his face would be the back of the tea kettle, and it's like the spout is coming up and out of the back of his head.
Oh, I really hate that.
Yeah. I
really hate that.
It's a phallus. It's a damn phallus.
Oh my God.
And then of course the mantis alien, which is always there, and we will get to that little
always
motherfucker.
Watching the fucking.
Oh God, this mantis is a pervert.
This mantis is a pervert.
He's a pervert.
It came on him as a child.
Oh, and you'll see he's always there when the shagging goes down. And finally, one we haven't spoken about yet.
Oh God.
Crescent. Now let me describe Crescent to you. Many of his paintings showcase Crescent. Rockin' body.
Yes. Like nice, like full but not insanely big tits.
Right. Like tits that are voluptuous, but not to a point. She hasn't had work done. They're natural. They're all natural. Mm-hmm. A great body, a human body.
100% human.
A 100% human-like body. But here's where it gets weird. From the neck up, it's all alien.
Oh my God.
It is like your typical what you think of when you think of a gray alien. It's got the grays get the big kind of oval shaped head with the big round eyes, big black eyes, and kind of no nose, and like a black wig, like a back wig with bangs. She looks like Courtney Cox in Scream 3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is the thing that like makes me, because I always want to believe the person,
Of course.
And I do believe that some sort of thing happened in whatever, I don't know. But the fact that like this alien, all the other aliens are like fucking weird looking or like are alien, like they're grays. And then of course the one woman, she's got like fat swinging tits and like a rocking fucking pussy. And like why does this alien have like human everything except her face, which is really just like big, huge ass eyes, in long black hair. It's basically she's like an anime girl.
Here's
I'm
my
like,
thing.
this isn't. No.
You know, if I, you know, saying we, you know, let's say, obviously in the context of this podcast, let's talk about it like it's like this happened. You know, obviously who knows, but in my mind, I would think it is because they want to. They're testing on, you know, human sexuality or something like that. So they want a physique that is pleasurable
True.
to the human eye. But then why the face then? Why just
right?
I don't know, but I don't know if that would work for me. As smoking hot as the body is, I don't know if I could still do the job.
Right.
Looking into those eyes, you know what I mean? I don't know. Who knows?
Well, it seems like there's kind of like some sort of trance-like situation.
Yes, some sort of trance-like situation. And before we get into the dirty stuff, I just want to paint you a picture of kind of the life that David was growing up in. His parents were bastards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. From what we tell, like when I don't want to say bastards and that they were bad, but obviously when he told them, not only did they not believe him, he got a whipping, as he says. They beat the hell out of him.
And I think they fairly regularly beat him.
They probably fairly regularly beat him. He doesn't go into that specifically, but, you know, and we'll get into it because later on he just leaves home. And so, you know, and you don't do that if you love if you got a good home life. You don't just, you know, you don't leave unless it's the typical ways you leave, like going to college or going
right.
to,
Like he just left and never.
He left. He literally wrote a note saying, "I'm leaving," and he did it while they were gone. Didn't even say goodbye. So you get the feeling that his home life was not good. He was probably, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say because obviously he got a whipping. That to me sounds like but yeah, I get the feeling he was probably somewhat abused, I would think.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to say too that like I think that something that probably really affected him was his parents thought he was lying all the time and kind of would beat him and hit him. And then when he did tell them, basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like this was kind of he didn't like his life anyway. He was already in a really bad spot and maybe wanted to escape. But then at the same time, I don't know.
Exactly.
So it's just kind of, you got to look at it from all sides. But I do feel bad for him because it sounds like his childhood was hard.
Yes, it was. So I just wanted to state that up front that we're not in any way, we're not making fun of this guy. This is a personal experience. Whether it really happened or not is not our business.
And I truly believe that he, no matter what actually happened, he believes that it did.
He does believe it. And you know what? As long as he's not hurting anyone else, fuck anyone who says he can't believe what he wants to believe.
Absolutely.
Fuck anyone who says you can't believe what you wanted to believe. As long as no one else is getting hurt, that's the golden rule in my eyes.
We gotta you just gotta make fun of the fact that just that alien humping exists.
That it
you know
exists.
what I mean? It's more so
that it's
the
an option.
situation.
Where's like the dating app? Where's the dating app? Where's the Tinder for like what would it be? It would be like beam me up. Abduction. Oh, that sounds bad. I don't know.
I was into it at first and then I realized that
sounds bad.
But yeah, so we're really just making fun of the whole vibe, not him specifically.
Exactly. So let's get on to him meeting Crescent. So when he met Crescent, he was 17 years old. He was walking in the farmlands around the property doing work. He says she was sitting by a tree, and when he saw her, she rose up and approached him. And he said suddenly he just got rock hard.
Oh my God.
To quote him directly, he said he couldn't take his pants off quick enough. Couldn't get them down quick enough.
That
is
makes
what he
me
said.
feel so uncomfortable.
He looked at her and immediately rock solid, almost as if it seems like beyond his control.
Right.
That's the other. He never really said, because he does mention feelings of like paralyzation. When these are happening to him, he mentions paralyzation. I said that same damn word that I said
during
paralysis.
Yeah.
Paralyzation. I don't think that's a word, is it?
I honestly don't know.
We're going to put it on a fucking t-shirt.
Okay.
Paralyzation. So there is this, you get the sense that it's not that he was necessarily, oh baby, this is my thing, that it was something being done to him, that there was some effect she had over him to make him get aroused.
Right, because this was him losing his virginity.
This was how he lost his virginity, folks. And let's set the mood.
Yeah. Light a candle.
My God, who's that woman?
She's
standing up. She's coming to. Oh, God, man, I am rock hard.
Oh,
and so
that's
David,
a 17-year-old's voice.
This is what a 17-year-old man sounds like. So he lays back on the ground and she gets on top of him and proceeds to rock his world.
Okay, a woman who knows what she wants.
Oh, and that's the other thing. He says she's always on top. In all of these experiences, she's always on top, which is another thing. So she's your modern woman.
Goals.
She's getting hers. You know what I mean? She's working hard. She's out for her.
Yeah, she's getting it.
She's a savvy modern woman.
But at the same time, she's hot.
She's hot. She's smoking. I mean, the way he describes her as very tall. I get this idea of imagine Wonder Woman. Imagine Gal Gadot from Wonder Woman. Same bod, same. Even the hair, the dark hair, although the hair in the paintings is like black. It's like jet black.
Like jet black and kind of like very long. So
imagine Gal Gadot with an alien face. Everything else is that, it's like that. He is almost as this, this like chiseled from stone Adonis of a body but this alien face. So anyway, she's on top of him, rocking his world. He comes so fast and so hard, it hurts.
It fucking hurts.
It hurts. He says he comes so hard, he passes the fuck out.
Oh, my God.
He wakes up 15 to 20 minutes later with his pants at his knees. How many times has that happened?
Sounds like my Tuesday.
I call that a Tuesday night. You know what I mean?
Heyo.
Wakes up 15 to 20 minutes later, pants at his knees. Obviously, when he was young, here's the other thing. When he was young, he told these aliens, hey, I can't remember. Maybe he said it was actually to Crescent he was talking to. He said, my mommy and daddy don't believe in you. When I told them, they gave me a whooping. And he said he could sense she was unhappy about that. And so she said, then don't say anything. So he said after he told them that one time, never again did he say anything to his parents. So time goes on. He becomes 19. And these things repeatedly happen to him. But you got to think whatever's going on at home is probably pretty bad, and it's only getting worse. So at 19, David Huggins takes off on his own. He doesn't even wait. His parents are out of the house because he said if they were there, they wouldn't have let him go. He writes him a little note explaining, I have passion for art. I'm moving to a city where...
I think New York,
It was to New York City, yep. And this would have been the mid-60s, I think 65, 66 is what he said. Mm-hmm. And he just took off and never said goodbye or anything and went off to be his own man. At 19, headed to New York City.
Yeah.
So he said it was 1965, he thinks, 1965, 66. And he said at this time in New York, there was a big transit strike. So a lot of the public transit was down. And he said it was a really rainy day and it's starting to rain. And he goes, well, heck. And he just holds out his thumb. This is the 60s when hitchhiking was still a thing. And he said this woman picked him up and he said, hey, I just, I'm trying to get home. If you can just take me through Central Park, drop me off at the other end of Central Park, I can walk the rest of the way. And she said, sure, get in. And he said they didn't talk hardly at all. He said she took him to where he needed to go. He got out of the car. He said, thank you so much for the ride. He said she didn't say anything. He just closed the door and she drove off. And so he gets out and he's walking home. And that night, so he gets home and that night he has a dream of a woman's face hovering above him. It's this alien face like Crescent's. But the eyes are closed. So it's just this spooky like silhouette of this pale gray white face in the dark with the eyes closed, surrounded by blackness. And this would happen to him every night for like months. And every morning when he'd wake up, he would hear the words, "We'll be back tonight."
Weird.
Yeah. So this keeps going on. So one day he decides to buy flowers for this woman that keeps showing up in his dreams every night. And the next morning when he wakes up, flowers are gone. The flowers were gone. So here you go. They got a sense of romance.
I guess.
They have a sense of romance. And he talked about the next night Crescent came over and he said they were rubbing heads together.
Oh, yeah. He gets he's like, oh, you don't even. Next time you're with your girl, make sure you rub heads.
Oh, he's like, he even uses the words, guys, trust me on this.
Oh,
next time you're with your girlfriend, rub those heads. And like he said, everything about this woman looked like a woman except for the large eyes, and also long fingernails, which was weird. But this is the insect being, whenever they were fucking, was always there watching.
Well, I did, but so every time that he was looking back, or these dreams, would he dream that they were fucking, or how did he know that they were
I
fucking?
think this was fucking, because he said this was a continuous thing. It was like it was essentially his girlfriend, and he describes this in the film. He said every night he would get, or not every, whenever it happened, he said he would get himself together like he was going on a date, except they wouldn't be going out. But he said he thought of it as a date, and he even said, there were some girls at the art what was it, the Art Institute or Art League. It was a group of artists. He said there were a few girls there that he had gone on dates with, but you know, it didn't work out. I wonder why not.
Yeah.
And so Crescent was kind of his steady. It was kind of his bay, his rock, his, you know, and that's how he looked at it. But every time they were together, this fucking Manus would be in the corner just like watching.
That's so weird.
And it's like, my thing is like, can't you take like another form?
Right.
Like, if this is, like we said, unless this is like Crescent's actual body, like, I get the feeling Crescent is in a partial disguise for her body. You know,
I guess.
Why the fuck is she not wearing some sort of a different face? But yeah, so you get the sense, can't he be observed without him standing? If it must happen, if he must be observed in the act of coitus, can you at least pretend like there's no one there, even if he knows there is?
I know. I don't really know why, like, the Mantis is always... He's kind of in a corner watching, but not hidden by any means.
Right. It's almost like if someone was just like, every time he had sex, they just set up a camera. And it's like they didn't tell you. But here's the thing. That is almost... Because with a camera, you don't know what's going to happen every day. At least with the Manus, you at least know it's just his eyes only. You would hope. Who knows? But it's like, also, who's the Manus going to, like, leak this sex tape to? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
but it's like...
I mean, I guess every single alien... But
maybe that's a big market in the alien world, just like amateur human porn.
Yeah, just like jacking off to weird sex.
Right. So every time they were being observed, which kind of further lends itself to this thing of observation, like these are some sort of tests that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, this is when things get serious. One day he's doing his painting and there's a bright light and suddenly Crescent appears as she does. But this time she's stressed. She's freaking out. And David's like, what is wrong? And she says, David, the baby is dying.
The baby?
The baby is dying. And he's like, what are you talking about? What baby? She said, your baby, our baby.
Jesus.
It's this, so also let me describe what this bright light is, how he described it. Obviously, Crescent would come to him in person, but there were also times where it was almost like a shining, glowing ball or light, and it would be like a portal. He could see through it almost like you would look through a window, and she would be almost like a floating TV screen, and he could, they could communicate, but they were in two separate places. And she's freaking out. She's like, oh, David, the baby's dying. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then he goes, well, if it's my baby, like, you know, I'm coming over there. This is my baby. I want
the paternal instinct kicks in immediately with this one.
And here's maybe my favorite part. And she goes, no, you can't come. And he goes, oh, my baby's in trouble and you're telling me I can't come? I'll show you.
Oh, my God.
He goes to his bed and he passes out.
Yeah, I know. I forgot about that.
What a way to stick it to, oh, yeah, I'll show you.
It's insane. In the documentary, he's like, you think that he's leading up to being like, so I just jumped through the portal and I went and I got my son. He's like, I'll show you, and I passed out.
You must think this must imply some sort of astral projection, like he's traveling. Because what's weird, it's like, first of all, how do you just make yourself pass out? Like, did he, like, unless you're taking like a fucking like hardcore, even if you were to take a sleeping pill, you got to wait 30 minutes or so.
Well, I think it's like what actually happened was probably Crescent or whoever the fuck like did something and gave him the signal like pass out right now, and he just passed out to bring him to the place.
Has to be, even though they don't say that. I mean, she's telling him, don't come, you can't come, and he goes, oh yeah, watch this, and just like passes out. So
I guess he convinced them. I guess.
Would you like to tell him what happens when he gets over there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So our guy, he goes onto this ship or, you know, whatever. I don't really know exactly what it is. And they go into this room. He calls it the incubator room. And it's just like full of babies that are like half human, half alien, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a maternity ward.
Right. And, you know, David, he just makes a killer joke. You know, he's in there. He walks in and he's like, hey... how am I going to send all these kids to college?
Yeah. I love that in this moment he decides to crack a joke. And this is something he said in now, this is weird. I don't want to jump the gun. But he says, because later he's writing a script about his experiences. And when you hear, and he uses that line in his script, and also when he does public talks, he's mentioned that line.
Oh, God.
And it's like, I don't know if in that moment, if I would have a sense of humor.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I think it's probably like he thought of that after the fact when he was
Must've.
writing.
It just
and
sounds
then just
cooler.
tells the story like he thought of it at the time.
It's like when someone tells you a story how they quit their job and they're like, and as I walked out the door, I turned around and I said, "Up yours."
Right.
You know, watch me spread my wings and fly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who knows? Maybe, but you know, maybe that was added on for effect.
Right.
You know, but anyway, keep going, please.
So no, I mean that's kind of the main thing that I remember. But so
he goes, like you said, there's this room full of babies, and because the mantis, when he first gets there, Mantis is not happy he's there.
Oh, that's right.
He's like, you know, you can't be here, and I would be like, dude, you watch me fuck every night.
Right.
Show me where my fucking babies are.
Also, just literally like. You come over to my house all the time. Let me see your house.
Yeah, dickhead. Like, I'm always inviting you over. I had you over for Thanksgiving, WrestleMania, you know.
You jizzed on me in Georgia.
Yeah. Like, dude, let me see my fucking babies. So when he first gets there, Crescent is holding the baby, and she says, you know, he's dead. The baby's dead. And he said she's holding this baby kind of weird. She's like hanging, like dangling the baby, like not by its heels. She's holding it like under its armpits, but it's like laying there kind of lifeless.
Like she isn't cradling it at all or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And he touched the baby, and he said when he touched it, it was like a little spark, a little snap of electricity. Kind of, I would assume, sort of like when you've been walking on a carpet and you touch a doorknob or you kiss somebody, you know, you feel a little pop.
Right.
And he said all of a sudden the baby started moving. And when the mantis saw that, that's when he took him to that room. He goes, I have something to show you. All these babies all needing help. And that was what he said, because he makes a point to say, I ended up touching every single one of those babies.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Touching those babies to bring them back to life.
Right.
So he goes around, gives them a little tie, assume just a little tap on the forehead or something. And these...
And were all of those his?
I mean, we assume.
I guess. Like that was his room?
Does that mean every hookup with Crescent was popping out a child? Like,
right.
Because clearly that must mean the actual what's the word?
Gestation
the
period?
gestation period is very rapid.
I guess.
You would assume. Well, you assume alien technology, they probably have a way of, you know, preheat in the oven.
Or maybe just some of those were his babies, and then some of them were babies from a different human that a different Crescent was fucking.
Right, because later in the documentary, he does talk about meeting other people who have said these things have happened to him. So, you know, given the sort of scientifical studying... Scientifical, also a word like paralyzation. We got to keep a list of every word I make up.
Yeah.
He talks about, you know, you get this very, you know, this sense of it's a study. It's like at college when they say it's bio with a lab. You actually are doing it. So it's like they're always, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing the same thing, if they were doing the same thing to many people, and that's what these collection of babes was the product of. So he resurrects these babies, you know, and then one day when he's back at home, he just starts having a meltdown, and he doesn't really describe. They don't really come, but he starts having meltdowns, saying my babies died, and it's all my fault. He thinks that the babies died, that he couldn't save them, and the Greys. Aliens are able to calm him down, and two large alien women that kind of look like Crescent calm him down, and another Crescent is also there, and she says the baby didn't die, and another one of these alien women bring out the baby and shows him that it's alive. And that's the other thing, is there's other Crescents. Not Crescent. Crescent is that specific one, but there's other
ones that look like her.
And he even, God, he brags about, he even talks about these other women, these other alien women he's banged. I mean, this guy.
Oh, yeah, because he's banged, it's not all Crescent,
Not
right?
all Crescent. There was a few.
It's usually Crescent.
I don't think it was, the vibe I get is it's not like a harem,
right.
A harem of these women. It sounds like maybe 2 or 3 at most, but they all looked like Crescent. And God, he even shows that he's a painting taller than him of this life-size painting of what these women look like. Once again, rockin' bods.
It's insane.
Alien face, Cher wig.
Yes, very much a Cher wig.
Very, like I said, think Courtney Cox, Scream 3. So after this, they kind of leave him be for a while.
Right.
For quite a while. And David kind of goes on with his life and gets married and has a son named Michael. And
Great.
August 17th, 1987, they return after a very long hiatus. And David suddenly begins, how this happens, they didn't just suddenly pop up out of the view. What happens is David suddenly starts to have these memories.
Well, did we even really say that he forgot about? I don't think we even said that.
Well, in the documentary, they don't even explicitly say it.
No, I think they do.
Do they?
I thought they said that, like, he did forget, like, he didn't remember. I don't even know.
Oh, you're right, because he didn't see him again for a long time, and then suddenly in the late 87, he starts to remember.
Well, because, yeah, I think they're saying, like, he didn't really clarify how much he remembered at any point. Like, when he was sleeping with Crescent, when he was an adult, I don't really know if he remembered the stuff happening when he was a kid in Georgia.
Right.
Or, as you know what I mean? Like, so there was a while there where he didn't remember that any of this had happened to him. And that's what's, like, so
that's
weird about this.
Because you hear about, it's funny, and a lot of, and this goes beyond just aliens. We were talking about shadow people and how people forget. And literally, when we were recording that episode, a friend of ours was listening to it, and listening to this episode about shadow people, he remembered he had very vivid experiences with the Hat Man as a young boy. Yeah. And that he just, for whatever reason, didn't feel comfortable sharing with people and just sort of forgot about it. And then now as an adult, when he heard that episode, it kind of, so it sounds like something sort of, re-sparked these memories. And it really came out when he got it. So first of all, know that David Huggins is a huge sci-fi buff. And he is a VHS aficionado. Oof. And it's not that he doesn't have I think he probably does have a DVD player. He just prefers...
Yeah, he says he likes the VHS better.
He loves sci-fi horror on VHS. And there's this great part of the show when he's showing him his collection. He says he owns well over a few thousand VHS tapes. All of them, like a lot of 1950s sci-fi, a lot of horror, paranormal stuff. So he seeks out this book by Bud Hopkins called Intruders. And as he's reading this book, it all starts flooding back. That's when he starts to remember what happened to him with Crescent and whatnot. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's right. So it all starts flooding back. And he tells his wife, and he said it was immediately over. Yeah. That breaks my heart. He said literally, he told his wife. Now, granted, who knows how he said it,
Well, I was just going to say that in the documentary, though, he does say that they, like, already were kind of on the rocks. Right. So it's not like that they were in this perfect happy marriage and just this was the one thing that this was the only reason. Right. So, I mean, it's still very unfortunate and not, ideal, but this wasn't the only reason why they got divorced.
Right. And on a happy note, he's still has a great relationship with his son, Michael, who's now an adult man. And in the documentary seems very well adjusted. He looks totally like normal. He has a pretty nice job, and he loves his dad. And he says, he goes, I never thought about it. He goes, I never questioned. He goes, sure, I believe my dad. Like, he goes, it doesn't really affect me. Yeah. And that, I think, is a beautiful way to look at it.
Totally. I completely agree.
It's one thing if these beliefs are ruining their life and your life, especially if it's family. Like if your child is going through, but like, I love the fact, as long as my dad isn't hurting anyone, he's paying his bills, he's bathing and who cares? Yeah. Who cares if my dad believed this happened to him or not? Right. I'm going to support him because it sounds like it wasn't an easy experience. Whether it was real or not, he believes it's real. Right. So that's what I really like. His son came off very well in the documentary. His boss, they interview his boss at
kind of felt the same way.
At the deli, and he says the same thing. He goes, sure, I believe him. Like, why shouldn't I? Like, it doesn't affect me either way. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's talk about some of these paintings. Tell me some of your faves.
Oh, I have so many faves.
And one, like we said, he's a good painter.
Oh, for sure.
He's a good painter. And he describes it. He said he's always loved impressionistic art, sort of your Monets, your Renoirs, your Van Goghs. So they kind of have that look. Very, lots of color, very pretty. But sometimes the subject material, go ahead.
It just can be... it's like, I don't even know how you describe them, like portraits, I guess. Like they can be very graphic.
Oh yeah.
Like there's one where he's literally ejaculating into a cup of some kind with Crescent and some other alien woman.
Two of these alien women, he's standing by a table with a bowl on the table,
good Lord.
And they are milking him like a goddamn cow. Like jerking
it's insane.
And it's like, my thing is like, if you need it, why don't you just fuck me? That worked for the last, half of my life.
I just don't think you get it.
I clearly
I think
don't.
you just don't. I don't think you are.
You're right.
I don't think you're enlightened enough to get it.
Right. I mean, maybe someday when I'm jacked off into a bowl by two hybrid alien human women, I mean, maybe I'll understand. I
hope you do.
I don't know his journey.
It's important.
It's so.
That's a great one.
And then, but some of these paintings are pretty beautiful. Like there's some of just like landscapes and stuff that are beautiful. And even some of the craft are really fun and interesting. Unfortunately, he's always buck-ass naked in these paintings.
And they are mainly fucking in the photos.
Mainly fucking.
There's really not a lot of other activities.
And even when they aren't fucking, he's naked.
Yes.
He's just running around dick out. Like there's plenty of paintings of like his backside and he's like looking up and seeing something in the sky like, oh, and it's just his pale white ass.
Yeah.
And it's like, so whenever they're around, did they make you naked or were you just like, he was always naked?
Yeah. And like he never had a shirt on.
Right.
Or any, so that's just, I also love the painting of him losing his virginity because, he really did a good job of making his face look in pain.
Pain, right. In the throes of a painful, but maybe still ecstasy?
I guess.
Because he does mention like he most of the time enjoyed this, especially like later on when he was in New York, he said he enjoyed these encounters.
Yeah, I think it was just the first, well,
you probably got to get used to a fucking 9-foot mantis standing in the corner watching you and probably just jacking off.
And also I'm sure Crescent's vagina is like sucking out the fucking
and I'm
shit
sure it's tailor made for it's probably I'm sure it's it's good
so
times.
good.
And what do you think of this? Because first of all, the first thing that pops in my mind, his first encounter with this little hairy guy, what a way to make a fucking impression.
Right.
You would think, okay, there's your typical alien abduction, a bright light, and we look up and there's these big... Instead, it's just like, here is a mini Chewbacca just running out of the woods, like going, hey, David, hey! Almost like, I imagine like the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Except he's not, he's going, hey, David, I'm late, oh, God. And then he turns and runs back into I just imagine, like you said, it's a Muppet.
For real. And that's the thing that is...
Maybe they thought because he was a child that this small... furry form, maybe he would think it was cute, like a like a animal or just like a fun little that's maybe. It's
so interesting with alien abduction stories because you always just have to ask, or it's you can't help but ask, why this person and why this person for so long and why this person in this way, but then at the same time you're like, why is this person lying? Why would they lie about this?
Right.
And another thing is that some people may say, oh, he's so drawn to sci-fi books and horror movies and stuff, so he created this fantasy for himself with Crescent and these alien abductions. But you could also look at it in the other way, where he's had these experiences with alien abduction and Crescent, and that's why he's so interested in sci-fi and horror and all that. So it's just interesting. It's really easy to look at it from one perspective and be like, this is complete bullshit, because as I said earlier, even I get a little tempted with this story sometimes to think that, but you know what the fuck do I know?
Right.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking of like, there has to be a better way to introduce yourself.
Oh, God.
And then when the little fuzzy guy doesn't work, you follow it up with the most fucking terrifying thing you can think of, a 9-foot mantis that just shoots his load in your face the second he sees you.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't get it. Like, if aliens are
Where's the in-between?
Exactly. And if they're so intelligent, why are they doing such dumb, weird shit?
Right, exactly. And I feel like the most effective way would be to look as human as possible.
Right.
Get to know a person and then be like, hey,
let's
little secret between you and me. I'm an alien. Oh, and of course they're going to be like, oh, yeah, right. Then do something to show it. Make some, love it, prove it, but do it in a way that's like, hey, like earn their, so that they know who they come to know you as a person. Obviously they don't know you're an alien, but they know you as a bit, your personality, your interests and stuff, so that when you drop this bomb, there's a little more nuance.
Right.
Here it's just like, you are throwing everything, the worst things you could, especially at a young child.
It's just weird.
Absolutely.
We don't actually, we're like, oh yeah, that mantis is just jizzing all over the place. But like, we don't actually know what that was.
Right.
We don't actually know what that was doing.
We don't.
So,
I don't know if we'll ever know.
Yeah.
But David Huggins, God bless him, he's from what I think this documentary came out a few years ago, but as far as we know, still living in Hoboken, painting and living his best life, and all power to him.
We wish him well.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps it up for David Huggins.
I think so too.
AKA the Alien Humper.
Oof.
Ooh, man, we should have saved this one for Valentine's, but I'm glad we didn't, because this one's too steamy. This is the UFO equivalent. This is like the UFO equivalent of like 50 Shades.
Oh,
This is like the 50 Shades of the UFO world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Citizens of the Milky Way, good night and goodbye.